Let's recap a little bit about what we did last week. First of all, we want to talk on the Egyptians' history so that you better understand that. The Egyptians' recorded history actually started about the middle of the history of that. A lot of it, of that time, was recorded from the past, and they called that the history of the gods, meaning that that was when they formed the civilization, and I'm trying to look over here to see if I've got any details on that, and I don't, naturally. But that was the time that they kind of got established. They made a lot of funny rules back then that were followed as time went on. Now, in the midsection, which was about maybe up to 5,000 years before the birth of Jesus, the ruler Amenemhat, isn't that a great name, was sometimes written about as possibly Moses, little late or early for that. And then after that, of course, we had Akhenaten. That, another great name, of course. They had really long and great names. That another pharaoh that they thought that possibly, or ruler, they thought possibly that was Moses, but Moses was Moses. And they had a lot of pharaohs. Let me tell you some of the history of the pharaohs. One of the things, in order to maintain the rulership, they had to run around the temple or the palace at least 10 times faster than anybody else. Every year this had to be done. Another thing they had to do is they had to wrestle bull to the ground. I think maybe that's who they raced when they went around the temple. But that I found very interesting. And what was interesting about it was, very seldom did the Pharaoh do it. He could appoint someone to do it. So in those days, there were a lot of young studs out there that were training for that because they wanted to impress the Pharaoh and get all the gold coin and the goodies and the perks that were given to them at that time. Last week I said I would explain the meaning of 40 to you. That's quite a meaning for modern religionists. They're always saying, well, we do a 40-day diet, or you do a 40-day fast, or 40 days this and 40 days that, because they get it out of the Bible. That was a lot like 1,000 people or 100,000 people. Those were figures that were meaningful to the writers of those days, or to the historians. So 40 years was about the lifespan of the average Egyptian. In fact, they didn't live a long time. Some did, but most of them didn't. They died around 40 years. And so 40 became a typical number. And when the Hebrews wrote in their Bible 40 days or 40 this, that was a long time. That meant a long time. It didn't necessarily be specific. So many things were written in ways that illustrated something rather than were actual facts. So as we talked about, and I said we'd recap, last week we talked about Moses being the baby that was in the basket and was caught and raised. And then we talked a little bit about how after he killed the overseer, how he ran off and traveled across the desert to another area, and finally even married his wife, one of the wives there. And if you read the Bible, you realize that he also fought for justice in those areas. He wasn't the most popular person in the world because he wanted everything to be right and to be copacetic, just the perfect way. Well, to put it mildly, he was what you would consider kind of a rabble-rouser today. Or if we had these demonstrations like you hear about for justice in China, for wanting to get democracy in Iran or Iraq or Syria, he might have been right at the front of that because that was his style of doing, but he listened to God. Now that's where it comes in. He listened to God and he worked with God. Now, if he, some people get a little confused because they said that when he led the people into the desert, he led it with his brother Aaron. There goes that alarm again. Well, 5 minutes isn't very long, and I talk too much and digress too much. I apologize for that. But his brother Aaron obviously came from the 40 years that he spent in a foreign country, and that would be basically where that would come from, more than where it came from as the son of the princess. Well, that really covers Moses. Next week I want to talk to you more about the man Jesus, because the lineage and how that all got through there. The lines from Abraham on are the Hebrew, the Jewish lineage, and it's interesting. Most of the Bible in the Old Testament is history, and a lot of it in the New Testament is history and conjecture by people that had never even seen Jesus, like Paul. And we'll talk about all that, and I'd like to get you thinking for yourself. God bless you, and thank you for allowing me to share a little of the little that I know with you today.